Hello Internet, welcome back to Tromsø Twilight, the channel where I, Vincent, talk to you, the abyss, about books, movies, music I enjoy, find interesting, or a combination of the two. Except today I'm not talking about any of those three things, I'm talking about Euphoria, the streaming television smash hit series that's on HBO, famously written and directed largely by Sam Levinson. This show was a huge success in the kind of immediate post-COVID era. I remember watching the first season while I was really sick with COVID, and then around the time I was watching it, the second season came out, and it sparked all kinds of discourse. It was like equally loved and hated. And in the meantime, the stars of the show have become superstars. Jacob Elordi is like the world's biggest heartthrob, starring opposite Margot Robbie. Zendaya is in everything. Sydney Sweeney is kind of everybody's favorite whipping girl and has had a lot of controversy around whether she is or is not right wing. And Levinson himself went on to make The Idol, which was absolutely panned across the board by a lot of people and kind of a massive embarrassment to The Weeknd, who starred in it. So at this point, when I'm making this video, the two first episodes of season 3 have been released, and there's an enormous backlash. Lots of people are saying it's terrible, it's disgusting, it's exploitative. A lot of people are saying that it's just bad, it's poorly written. It's as if in the time in between season 2 and season 3, the kind of Sam Levinson hate has taken over, and the kind of polarization that was around season 2 has turned mostly into criticism. Being as I very much like the first two seasons, I was interested to see this season, and I would like to share my opinions about these two episodes. I don't necessarily remember what was in episode 1 and what was in episode 2, so I'm going to talk about them together, and if you've seen them, I'd be interested to hear what your point of view is. So now the first thing that's kind of interesting to me about the third season of Euphoria is that a lot of people who worked on the first two seasons seem to be missing. Angus Cloud tragically died. He was one of the most iconic characters, Fezco. He obviously has had to be written out of the season. Barbie Ferreira also fell out with Sam Levinson. You could tell in season 2 because her character was really marginalized, and in one of the few scenes that she was in, there was a terrible continuity error with her necklace, so it's almost as if she just turned up, ran the lines twice, and then refused to do anything else. It's a real shame she's not in the show. I like Barbie Ferreira a great deal. She brought a lot to the first season. She was recently in a movie called Myland Kicks that I liked a great deal. I miss her in this. I miss Fezco. But also Labyrinth, the musician and composer whose music kind of created a lot of the atmosphere of the first two seasons and who was in a very iconic scene in the second season, he's also gone. He seems to have fallen out with the production company and with Euphoria in general. He wrote on social media, being very aggressive about it, said that he'd had all of his music removed. And you can really tell, like, there's something missing in the sonics of the show. I don't know, but I think also maybe the main cinematographer has left, because what was incredible about the first season of the show was the colors and the way that it looked. It was totally innovative at the time. Everybody tried to copy it afterwards in advertising, in movies. It was like this sort of dark neon noir, and it always had this surreal element that really made sense, in my opinion, for something that was about high school. It was like high school is sort of at once innocent and full of drugs and sex and abuse and bullying and terror, and you're kind of dreaming yourself into existence. So it had this sort of surreal, dreamlike quality to it. When I think about the first season, I think about the first episode where the character Jules is riding on a bike and everything just looks so weird, like it's shot from behind with this massive lighting on her with all dark around it. And then at the end, when Zendaya relapses, there's a whole dance sequence that almost looks like a Beyonce video. It's just very wild and unrestrained. And the start of the second season opens like a Tarantino film or like a gangster movie, like a sort of throwback 70s type of thing. This third season so far, it doesn't have any of this visual flair. Like, they start the first episode of the third season and it's referencing cowboy movies, westerns. It's doing it very deliberately, like in the font that they're using, in the way that sort of deserts are shot and stuff, but it doesn't have the same sort of style, the same kind of flair as the other two seasons did. So when you don't have this incredible soundtrack and you don't have this weird visual quality, what are you left with? And what you have is these characters from high school who are no longer in high school. It's 5 years later and they've all moved on. And you've got this kind of core of mega stars who are now returning to these roles. And the question is, what will Sam Levinson do with these characters? And honestly, what he does with the characters suggests that he never had any idea what he was going to do with the story. Like, he set up the story with Laurie, the psychopath drug dealer, who was trying to turn Rue into like a trafficked sex worker slave. And comes back and doesn't do that, turns her instead into a drug mule. Nate, who was this bizarre psychopath, terrifying individual in the first and second season, is now a kind of henpecked loser trying to find his way in industry, in capitalism. And this whole season is sort of about how one transitions from school into, late capitalism. But it feels a bit to me like Sam Levinson's at a disadvantage because everybody's been to high school. So anybody can kind of recognize themselves in the stories of the first two seasons, even though they might be a little more sensational in some cases. But Sam Levinson doesn't seem to know what the world is like outside of Hollywood. So he's placed Maddie and Lexi in Hollywood. He's made Rue a kind of petty criminal in a Tarantino film. And Sydney Sweeney's character, he wants to kind of continue the exploration of like sex and the internet from the early seasons. So he's made her an aspiring Instagram model and OnlyFans creator. Now, Sydney Sweeney at this point must be about the most sexualized woman in the Western world. And I have not made any secret of the fact that I actually really kind of like Sydney Sweeney as a screen performer. I really loved her in Immaculate. I liked her in White Lotus. I always loved her in Euphoria. I think she's actually very kind of fearless in her performances, and she gets a lot of criticism that she doesn't really deserve. And she's been quite an unsympathetic figure in the public eye, leaning into a kind of white supremacist meme in some jeans adverts, refusing to apologize for it. But I always have in the back of my mind that, women in the public eye are basically vilified no matter what they do. It's interesting what Sam Levinson has done with her character, Cassie, because it's like he's incorporated Sydney Sweeney's public persona into Cassie's character. So he has her like doing pornographic photo shoots like in the American flag and dressed up as like a baseball person, and then also like dressed up as like a dog at one point. But it's as if he's sort of mocking her, I think. But the thing that's interesting to me is that because she's so fearless, like she's doing this bit where she's like a grown, like adult baby, it's like Sydney Sweeney doesn't give a fuck. Like she doesn't give a fuck. She will do like any role and she'll just take it there. And like I say, I think she's quite fearless. So I almost feel like it's like he's trying to make fun of her, by writing these aspects of her public persona into the character, but she kind of just leans into it and it ends up making him look a little cruel. So that's one huge advantage that the show still has in this third season is Cassie, is Sydney Sweeney, is her, and also Zendaya as an actress is doing really well. I think in this season she's playing this sort of relapsed version of the character Rue, which is a very sort of like nonchalant and slightly unlikable, but also slightly comic performance. All of the storylines to do with that character are like totally ridiculous. It's jumping the shark territory, but Zendaya can pull it off, so it doesn't end up being unentertaining. I don't care for what they've done with Lexi. It's really boring. I feel like Sam Levinson has Lexi as a self-insert. He sees himself in her, and then so he's making her like, travel his road into Hollywood. And I don't really care for what they've done with Maddie, who was probably the most interesting character originally and is now, so far, pretty boring. But they're going for a sort of satirical element where she is going to exploit Cassie, who she does not like or respect. The things that really land for me so far in this season are more the comic aspects. Euphoria was very dark and very transgressive originally. Now it's kind of ridiculous. So a guy, having sex with a woman in front of a Nazi flag, and he's got a tattoo of Charles Manson's eyes on his chest, things like that. And then a drug dealer getting revenge by introducing a pig into somebody's house because he's so offended by having been called a pig. There's some very scatological aspects that I don't find funny, but that are also like kind of leaning more into this comic tone. Another thing that I think is really strange, like a really strange choice that they've made, is what they've done with Nate's father. Because Nate's father, there was an episode about kind of his fall from grace in the second season that was all about the fact that his life had fallen apart due to his suppression of his own sexuality. And though that episode was quite exploitative in some ways and very in your face, it also had a degree of tenderness about it. It was sort of about regrets that come from suppressing your identity and lost love. And he's back in season 3 now, identifying as a sex and love addict and having suppressed his desire or his love for men again, and explaining it as part of an addiction, which in a show that's largely about addiction, I think is a really sad choice to make and kind of a betrayal of that character, and a little bit weak. So while I was watching it, I actually kind of enjoyed it. I thought that it was better than people were saying. I didn't think it deserved the extreme criticism that it's been getting online. I don't think it's as shocking as people are making out. I don't think it's as failed as people are making out. But now that I've talked about it out loud, I notice that there's lots of things that kind of trouble me about it, or that I think are strange choices. So what I'm hoping is that this third season, which has its own tone, it has its own visual style, it's missing a lot of what made Euphoria originally, will find its kind of own style, its own space, its own way of telling these stories, so that it kind of becomes its own thing. Because what I think is really interesting is Sam Levinson is kind of presented as this auteur figure, but you see that the more people he loses from his original team, the less the piece of work is what it was, and it becomes something somewhat more mundane. So this is my take on the start of the season. I'll come back later, once, maybe twice, and update it, see if I eat my words by the end of it. Please, as usual, jump in the comments if you're interested to talk to me about the show and what you thought of it. I'd be interested to hear any views on the episodes that have been, and let's come back and talk about it when it's done. Okay, thanks for now.